to drive next to world champion Michael Schumacher. Schumacher used to be a teammate to Martin Brundle, but Brundle is now with Ligier, and his season hit a low point in Monaco, when he spun and crashed, taking Jean Alesi with him. Alesi, of course, drives for Ferrari. Derek Daly is with me as always, and Ferrari is the team everyone's talking about, Derek. They may be ready for another technological leap.
In fact, the future of how Formula One engines are designed and built may be about to enter a new era because of Ferrari. In the 80s, they were forced to follow the pack and develop a V6 turbo, but Ferrari are still recognized as pioneers because their passion for the glorious V12 engines continued. But in keeping with John Barnard's reputation for revolutionary designs, the new Ferrari V10 is rumored to be as much as 50 pounds lighter than conventional V10s, and therefore will be carried in a cradle and not used as a stressed member. The Daily News opens up this weekend with Minardi having agreed payment terms on their 1993 engine bills to Ligier. The date for next year's Australian Grand Prix is now set for March 10th, 3 weeks before the IndyCar race up the road in Surfers Paradise. And Gerhard Berger says that the Austrian Grand Prix is 80% certain to return next year. Bernie Ecclestone is responding to the 107% qualifying rule by saying, and this is a quote, "The size of the field doesn't bother me. We are in the quality business, not quantity. I don't like people with begging bowls crying as if it's everyone else's fault." Eddie Irvine impressed the Silverstone management this weekend when he said this track is atrocious, ill-conceived and badly designed. Patrick Head and Frank Williams are so annoyed with Renault engines being supplied to Benetton, they said this weekend it will be a long time before they ever agree to share an engine program again.
The Williams team also had some comments about their driver lineup. That kicks off the silly season, and we'll have more to say about that as the day goes on. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the British Grand Prix, is brought to you by the incredible i30 from Infiniti. Flagship styling, space, and performance for around $30,000. Welcome back to the British Grand Prix. Let's take a look at the highlights of practice and qualifying. Friday was a sun-dappled day as Max Papis of Italy picked up his super license to replace Gianni Morbidelli with the Arrows team. World champion Michael Schumacher, in his efforts to set quick time, threw it off the racetrack as Damon Hill looked on. Schumacher eventually came through, set pole, and then reset it. But then it was Hill's turn. With a huge crowd on hand urging him along, he took the number one spot by 2/10, and Frank, as usual, was absolutely beside himself.
And despite the rain on Saturday, 45,000 people still came to Silverstone and saw Johnny Herbert throw the Benetton into the guardrail, not too much damage. Gerhard Berger then took his trip through the stones, no damage to the Ferrari. Michael Schumacher got it wrong down at Stowe, and then Damon Hill does a simple 180 and then almost a 360. Jean Alesi went down the pit road, did a 360, scant feet from the Pacific, and then Damon Hill and David Coulthard tell David Brown that, in fact, you can get through the gravel trap without any problems.
Here's a look at our starting lineup. On the pole, Damon Hill in the Williams Renault. He and his wife Georgie are expecting their third child today, as if he didn't have enough to think about. Starting alongside will be Michael Schumacher, who has problems of his own. He's being investigated by authorities back in Monaco. More on that later. Row 2 will be David Coulthard, the young Scot. Alongside him will be the Ferrari of Austrian Gerhard Berger. On row 3, Britain's Johnny Herbert will start his Benetton Renault alongside Frenchman Jean Alesi in the Ferrari. On row 4 will be Eddie Irvine, who has had lots to say about this present state of Formula One. He'll be in the Jordan Peugeot, alongside Mika Hakkinen of Finland in the McLaren Mercedes. Row 5 will be Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan, next to Mark Blundell of Great Britain in the McLaren Mercedes. Row 6 will be Martin Brundle, who is having his last race before turning the car over to Aguri Suzuki for the German Grand Prix. He'll start alongside Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany in the Sauber Ford. Row 7 will be Olivier Panis of France in the Ligier Mugen Honda, next to the Tyrrell Yamaha of Japanese Ukiyo Katayama. Row 8 will be Pierluigi Martini of Italy in the Minardi, next to the second Sauber driven by Frenchman Jules Bouillon. Row 9 will be Max Papis in for Morbidelli in the Footwork Hart. next to his countryman in the minority, Luca Badois. Row 10 will be Taki Inouye of Japan in the footwork heart, next to the 44 to Brazilian Pedro Diniz. Row 11, Bertrand Gachot of France and Brazilian Roberto Moreno in a Pacific and a 40, respectively. And on the final row, Mika Salo of Finland in the Tyrrell and Andrea Montermini of Italy in the second Pacific. Salo lost his dry weather times on Friday when he missed the scales and was disqualified. So he starts on the very back row. We'll take a look at the point standings coming into this 8th round as we wind up the first half of the Formula One season. Michael Schumacher, of course, leads as you watch Damon Hill sitting in his car, waiting for the roll-off and then the standing start. Here are the points. Schumacher by 11 over Hill. Jean Alesi is in third, followed by Berger, Coulthard, and Johnny Herbert. In the Constructors' Championship, Benetton Renault has taken the lead from Ferrari, while Williams Renault, the reigning Constructors' Champions, lie third. Derek, let's talk about the racetrack a little bit.
In years past, Silverstone was one of the very best, and over the years, recently, it has gone through many changes. There are some remarkable corners, Beckett's being one of them. 4th, 5th, and 6th gear on the exit, down through Chapel Curve, the Hanger Straight, down to the Rechange Stowe. Then you go down the hill to Vale. The thing about this racetrack now, it is very difficult to pass here because there are very short braking zones. Bridge Bend is daunting, impossible to pass, and then the stadium section in through Luffield. Smooth surface. If it rains here, there is a big problem with aquaplaning.
There you see Damon Hill leading Michael Schumacher on the reconnaissance lap. Recall that it was a year ago that Schumacher passed Hill on this lap. That is an infraction of the rules, but rather than being sent to the back of the grid as the rules stipulate he should have been, he was simply black flagged when the race was underway. He waited, did not respond to the black flag while his team argued the call. He was eventually suspended for 2 races and lost all of his points in this race for ignoring the black flag. And that led to one of the biggest controversies of the '94 season. There you see him towing the line behind the pole sitter Hill. Take a look at our weather conditions. We had rain when the cars first pulled to the grid. Right now it's a warm 78 degrees, warm for the Midlands of England at this time of the year at any rate. The humidity 46%, and there's a very strong chance we will see more raindrops before the day is out.
So Michael Schumacher, we saw him lock up those front brakes earlier. Here's up and down the hill into Bridge Bend. Dauntingly fast, but impossible to pass. And then the stadium section that I mentioned, because this is the old Woodcote chicane where people still remember the likes of Ronnie Peterson and the Lotus 72 sliding sideways through there. But then it disappeared as the safety-conscious people began to redesign these racetracks. And now we have things that are clinically perfect. They are a lot safer. But boy, we do miss the spectacle of speed.
Right at the top of your screen is the main entrance to this racetrack, and across the street is the Jordan Peugeot factory where Eddie Jordan's team puts their cars together. They're having a huge celebration for all of their employees on this, the occasion of the British Grand Prix. Eddie Jordan states that of the 90,000 seats sold for this race, 22,000 of them went to Irishmen who have come over to cheer their boys on. That is an astonishing number if it's anywhere close to being correct.
And you might wonder how you can see the green lights when you're so far behind on the grid and it goes around the corner. There are 2 green lights here, one halfway back so as the second half of the field can clearly see it.
Now it's time for one of the most important green lights of the season, the British Grand Prix like no other. We'll get the red light, then the green. Up come the revs. Watch the front row. Cloud of tire smoke for Gerhard Berger. Jean Alesi, his teammate, goes around. We have a slow car in the center of the racetrack. Michael Schumacher lighting up tires. Great start for Alesi as he moves up to second spot in the first 2 corners.
And I believe that was Eddie Irvine's Jordan who got that terrible start, but Jean Alesi, what an electrifying start by him, sailed past Gerhard Berger, and now he's in chase of Damon Hill.
And look at the pace Damon Hill is setting on the first lap as he rockets through Beckett's and onto the Hanger Straight.
And we can get another look at that start. We will get that for you. Look at David Coulthard try to sneak down inside the world champion.
Johnny Herbert got a great start as well. He's just behind Coulthard.
And you could see as the lights went green, Damon Hill got that initial jump on Schumacher, got the power to the road, and this is the advantage.
Now we will wait for the electronic sensors to tell us whether anyone rolled that start. It usually takes a few laps into the race before we decide whether the sensors are going to bring anyone in for a stop and go. It would be a terrible shame if they did. A great start to this British Grand Prix.
3 things to watch. There's Hill, gets a great jump. Look at Alesi. Goes by Berger, and that is Eddie Irvine, who almost gets hit by Rubens Barrichello when he got a terrible start in all his qualifying efforts. When he qualified 7th, it comes to naught and he drops back. Look at Schumacher.
As they come around to finish the first lap, our world graphics show you Hill, Alesi, Schumacher, Coulthard, Herbert, and Mika Hakkinen right there, running well for McLaren Mercedes.
Mika Hakkinen was the fastest man in the warm-up this morning. In fact, on full tanks, he was faster this morning than he qualified the McLaren, so they obviously found something in the setup last night that pleased Mika Hakkinen.
In fact, the top 4 were Hakkinen, Hill, Coulthard, and Alesi, and Alesi is showing that it was no fluke.
Damon Hill, the V10, slipping back to Michael Schumacher. Chasing Jean Alesi, this is Stowe down the hill to Vale. This is the slowest corner on the racetrack. Over the curbs. Gets faster. This is the remodeled Abbey corner. Used to be flat in 5th. This Williams team should be better prepared for the British Grand Prix than any other race this year. This is where they do most of their testing. They have done 5 days of testing since the French Grand Prix, trying to find out why Michael Schumacher seems to have the edge over this Williams team in racing conditions. The Williams management have their reasons why they think so, and it is controversial because there are suggestions that Michael Schumacher simply gets the job done as a driver during the races, and that Damon Hill just may not be pushing hard enough when the race starts. Whoa, what a thing to say.
2 very different lines there through Copse. Now into the Beckett section that most of the drivers say are among the best corners in the entire Formula One universe. They don't like the entire racetrack and its layout. They say it's not fluid enough, and they don't have as many fast corners as they would like. But that Beckett's left-right complex is absolute magic. The driver's exposed to up to 3 Gs left and right as they rocket through there.
On board with Schumacher. The corporate clone. I didn't say that, but Damon Hill did. Earlier this week, there's a war of words beginning to be waged, or continuing to be waged, between Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher. Schumacher in an unusual position, 3rd place, chasing the Ferrari. David Coulthard all over him. Johnny Herbert behind him. Unusually this morning in the warm-up, which is usually a telltale sign, Michael Schumacher was only 6th fastest. He said, no problem, Eddie Irvine is in trouble. So many Irish people here to cheer on this Irish team of Jordan Grand Prix, and Eddie Irvine, the free spirit, pulls one of the Peugeots to the sideline.
Irvine has had no luck here at all. Recall that a year ago, his car died on the warm-up lap leading to the starting grid. The reconnaissance lap was the end of his race last year. He does not get 3 laps into this year's British Grand Prix. And right now, Derek, I'd say that the Ferrari is holding up the cars behind him just that little bit.
And David Coulthard certainly seems to be being held up, although Schumacher through the right-hander was quicker as Eddie Irvine begins the long walk home. Well, it was induced into a spin, whatever caused that. Maybe that's what broke the car. You see him drop the clutch, spin those rear wheels and go away. But Eddie Irvine spins first. Then he retires, and Michael Schumacher, for once this year, is made to work a little bit harder than is normal, certainly in the last 3 races.
There you see the top 6. Behind them, Barrichello, Berger, Martin Brundle, Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Mark Blundell, Olivier Panis, Pierluigi Martini, Ukio Katayama, Jules Bouillon, Mika Salo, Max Papis, Taki Inoue, Bertrand Gachot, Luca Badois, Andrea Montermini, Pedro Denitz, and Roberto Moreno. At this point, Irvine, the only car out of the race.
And Mika Salo is worth a mention here. Started 23rd because of that disqualification on Friday. Ken Turrell went down to the stewards, pleaded his case, came away thinking they do understand, and I believe sanity will prevail. They'll give him his times back. To his astonishment, they didn't. He said, we don't mind as long as it doesn't rain tomorrow. It did rain. So Mika Salo has made a huge jump in such few laps here. Just under 4 laps, and Salo goes from 23rd all the way to 16th. He was 4th fastest yesterday in the wet qualifying session.
Salo's argument was that the sun was shining directly into the red light and he could not see it. But as Derek mentioned, the officials did not take that excuse. Now look at the gap leading to this train. In second place, the Ferrari of Jean Alesi. Michael Schumacher looking for a way around, but doesn't have that extra split second that he needs.
And that was only a temptation. That wasn't a move. All it was trying to do was put a bit of pressure on Alesi, but to the delight of this sold-out limited to 90,000 crowd here, Damon Hill is beginning to inch away every single lap here, has the measure of Schumacher on the rest of the field, with 5 laps gone, 4 laps gone.
Down under the bridge, rocketing into the stadium section. We mentioned that the Williams team has been commenting on the speed of their drivers. Here's another look from high overhead, courtesy of our host broadcasters from the BBC. Look at the Ferrari of a lazy rocket up the inside. Terrible start for Gerhard Berger. Almost gets squeezed out in the run down to the first corner.
And it was simply the wheel spin that Berger got. So now you know that Ferrari doesn't have traction control when you light up the rear tires and burn rubber like that. But Jean Alesi took full advantage. And when you get a start like that, track position can be such a huge advantage, as you see here. Berger all the way down in 8th place, having started on row 2.
There is Jean Alesi, winner in Canada earlier this year. And look at that gap up to Damon Hill. Now, this is what Hill needs, a gap over Schumacher. Schumacher has been driving rings around Hill and the rest of the field when it comes to speed just before and after his pit stops, and that combined with the ability of the Benetton crew to get their man in and out in the fastest times in the pit lane has allowed Michael Schumacher a lot of breathing room in the races thus far this year.
This is from Alesi's Ferrari. World Graphics shows you the gap that Damon Hill has on Michael Schumacher is because Hill is simply running away. Now, Schumacher may be being held up by Alesi's Ferrari, and remember what I said earlier. Although this is a very fast and open racetrack, it's very difficult to actually squeeze by somebody, even if they're holding you up just a little bit.
Among its many variations, this track at Silverstone can be divided up into 3 separate circuits and used all 3 at the same time by different teams for testing and driving schools and so forth. Also gives the driver in a racing situation a lot of alternatives, a lot of highway exits, if you will.
This is a new Copse Corner. It's shorter. They have moved the apex closer to the end of the pit lane to give a bigger runoff area. And here's Beckett's. Blinding corner, right, left flick. Patrick Head said that one of the most impressive corners in all of racing now is Beckett's because of the violence of G-load changes. Suddenly they're right, and suddenly they're left.
Enter it at nearly 170 miles an hour, exit at just over 100 miles an hour, and that lower exit speed is critical. You have to go as fast as you possibly can to build speed on the hangar straightaway. Now Coulthard right up behind Schumacher, who in turn, I believe, Derek, is being held up by the Ferrari of Alesi.
If he is, it's only just a tiny bit, because I haven't seen a realistic challenge yet. Look at David Coulthard climbs over those inside curbs. They're not the high FIA designated curbs. You can run over these. They're sort of guideline curbs. Listen to this low-speed section. It was all second gear.
While the battle is static, we'll take a quick timeout. We won't let you miss anything. We'll be back with more live coverage of the British Grand Prix. Back live at the British Grand Prix. A great battle for second place between Alesi, Schumacher, and Coulthard. Then another great fight. Hakkinen, Barrichello, and Berger just behind them for 6th, 7th, and 8th. Here comes Mark Blundell, bearing the legend, the will to win, on his helmet. And then Olivier Panis in the Ligier.
And Johnny Herbert having one of his best races because he is matching Michael Schumacher for speed lap after lap at the moment. Oh, how hard is Schumacher trying? That's how hard. He locks up the right front, then kicks it sideways as he turns in through Stowe, down the hill to Vale, and jump on those brakes again.
A lot of drivers with a lot to think about as they race today. We mentioned that Damon Hill out front, he and his wife are expecting a baby today. Michael Schumacher right there is being investigated by authorities in the tax haven of Monaco because it turns out they think he hasn't spent enough time living in the Principality to qualify as a resident for tax-exempt status. So he will have to answer to that. Meanwhile, his manager, Willy Weber, is being investigated by authorities in Germany for tax evasion, basically. There it is. We said it would take a few laps before the timers would tell us whether anyone was accused of jumping the start. Barrichello has been accused and convicted. Olivier Panis as well, and both of them suffered in our most recent race in Manicourt in France for the same offense.
How to destroy a man's race. Give him a 10-second penalty. The problem with these electronic jump starts, I don't know what the tolerance is, but if it's minute, maybe they should rethink it, because since they introduced it, I've never seen as many cars judged to have made jump starts, and I don't remember starts that blatantly jumped for years. You see one or two and they do get dealt with. This may be just a bit too close to the bone, calling all these people in, lining them up sometimes for 10-second penalties.
A look from above Rubens Barrichello's head. He will soon head for the pit lane or risk further problems with the officials. Ironically, part of the reason that electronic jump start system was gone to was because an official, a human being, which is the way they used to be judged, refused to acknowledge an obvious jump start by Olivier Panis a couple of years ago in the French Grand Prix.
Big week here for the Jordan team. Very Irish. They had a reception at the Irish Embassy, where Eddie Jordan was awarded the Irish Businessman of the Year for his efforts running this team. Multi-millions of pounds go through his hands running these cars here. This weekend, the technical changes are very small. New dampers are trying on the Jordan. In fact, Gary Anderson made a curious comment. He said he believes the car may be too complicated because when they have days to test it, it's usually very, very fast. Yet come to race weekend, they don't have enough laps to go through all the permutations. So the Irish flag being waved, but Gary Anderson, also from Ireland, thinks he needs to simplify that design.
There is David Coulthard wearing the flag of Scotland on his helmet. Protege of three-time world champion Jackie Stewart, who no doubt is in attendance here at Silverstone. These gaps pretty meaningless, except the one from first to second, because Alesi, Schumacher, and Coulthard are basically on the same piece of racetrack right now.
This is a great fight here for second place. David Coulthard hanging right to the tail of Michael Schumacher. A traffic jam for second, third, and fourth places here. It's the second traffic jam of the day for David Coulthard. We're on board now. Although there's only 90,000 people here, it was limited. David Coulthard sat for an hour in a traffic jam in the village of Silverstone, could not make it to the racetrack, and flagged down a motorcycle just to get here in time for the warm-up this morning.
Very low revs in that corner. The stadium section, part of the racetrack that has come under the most criticism from the drivers, as being so very slow.
Particularly when they realize the history and the past Silverstone, the era when it was blindingly fast, when you were tested every time you went to an apex, when you had a delight and a satisfaction every time you got it right. There just simply wasn't enough room to move the fences back to give it the type of runoffs that Formula One cars demand nowadays. So they had to slow it down, tighten it up, change it. And quite frankly, it's never been the same since. And this man, Damon Hill, at this moment thinks it's a superb racetrack, as you normally do when the car handles well and you begin to run away.
Damon Hill, who became the 8th British driver to win the British Grand Prix. 7, unless you count Tony Brooks, who shared his van wall with Sterling Moss back in 1957. The others to win, besides Moss, Brooks, Peter Collins, Jimmy Clark, Jackie Stewart, John Watson, who took the first victory for the newly reorganized McLaren International, Nigel Mansell, and of course Damon Hill. This track was also the site of the first victory for Frank Williams and Patrick Head. Clay Regazzoni in the FW07. When he wasn't quite as well funded as he is now, Frank Williams sold that car, the only Williams car that Frank Williams let go of, a car that had won a race, that is. He sold it for £20,000 more than a decade ago. He recently bought it back from an American collector for £250,000.
You can see the gap now from our world graphics. Damon Hill about a second a lap faster than the whole field at the moment. And I don't think Schumacher is being held up that much by Jean Alesi. He simply does not have the speed to muscle his way past the Ferrari. And Olivier Panis has peeled off to take his 10-second penalty, and Damon Hill again confirms just how fast he is. Lowers this fastest lap with every lap here, and he's still 2 seconds slower than he qualified. Frustration time for Panis.
And you can see it in his exit, like a carrier launch. Olivier Panis back on the racetrack. Michael Schumacher still looking down the inside, the outside of Jean Alesi's Ferrari. David Coulthard taking it all in.
Johnny Herbert still hangs on, hasn't quite been able to claw his way up behind David Coulthard. Look at that bridge corner, 180 miles an hour. They go through bridge. Luffield, all second gear. Drivers don't like this section, but it gives the crowd a great vantage point.
We'll be back to offer our vantage point when we return live to Silverstone. Live to Silverstone. The points might get juggled here today if Damon Hill can win this race. As you see, the top drivers in the points. Schumacher running third presently. Hill is in first and drawing away. Now more than 15 seconds up the road and lapping cars. He's already taken out the entire Pacific team. Jean Alesi, third in points, runs second. Gerhard Berger languishes back in 8th spot. David Coulthard is 4th and Johnny Herbert 5th.
And back to this great battle here. Alesi still has the legs on Michael Schumacher, and again he locks up that right front. Now remember, from what we've seen most of the races this year, Michael Schumacher and Benetton are the fastest in the pit lane. So if he can't get the job done here, perhaps he'll turn the job over to his crew in that pit lane to see can he get past Alesi, but I still don't think he has the pace of Damon Hill. In fact, I know he doesn't at the moment. It's obvious.
Jean Alesi in second. 61 laps scheduled. We are working lap number 14. I mentioned Silverstone was the site of the first victory for the Williams team, also the first for Ferrari when the pompous bull Froilan Gonzalez came through in the first modern era, if you will, Formula One World Championship race back in 1951.
David Coulthard peels off. The first of the leading group, David Coulthard peels off. Look how slow this pit lane is. Long left-hander, long single lane right-hander. So he's going to get his fuel and get in and get out of the way for Damon Hill.
Good move by David Coulthard. As long as he's following traffic, he can get back out on clean racetrack and go as fast as possible, hoping to take a position when the others pit. Not a bad stop at all for the Williams team, 11.4 seconds. So that will be the time to beat as the other runners come in.
Notice they had the wheels and tires on first, dropped the car down, waited for the fueler, and then David Coulthard might have been a second late dropping the clutch. Barrichello, that's not a pit stop. That in fact is this terrible jump start penalty. Whoa, what a frustrating time for any driver to be pulled out of a competitive point scoring position. He was running 7th. Just listen. That was Beckett's, that fast, blinding right, left, right at Beckett's. 4th gear, 5th gear. And in fact, Jordan uses 6th gear on the exit because they're the only team that has a 7-speed gearbox.
See if Schumacher or Alesi will peel off this time around. Approaching the pit in. They will not.
He didn't peel off to the pit lane, but he peeled off the racetrack. You see how wide he was all over the curves on the outside of the old wood coat leading onto this front pit straight into Copse.
Well, there was a lot of information there on Schumacher's pit board. I don't know how he digests all of that. Among the things they were telling them was that his teammate, Johnny Herbert, is just 2.5 seconds behind, and that might come as a bit of a revelation to Mr. Schumacher.
That's what Johnny Herbert needs, because you saw the accident he had yesterday in the rain. Johnny has had his confidence sapped by Michael Schumacher. This car is nervous. It's difficult to set up. It's difficult for Johnny Herbert to drive, but Schumacher has the ability and the confidence. Look at these two Pacific boys beginning to fight among themselves. This may split this 2nd, 3rd, and 4th group up, but Herbert is having difficulty driving this Benetton at the pace Schumacher does. And look at the traffic jam of slower cars now that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th has to make its way by.
Rubens Barrichello, pitted for his penalty in 7th spot, dropped back to 11th. Oh, Alesi runs afoul of Andrea Montermini in the Pacific Lotus.
Oh, that was a squeeze job. Alesi was lucky he got away with that. Then he blocked Schumacher. He could see what was happening. Taki Inoue throws the footwork car for a 360, and has he stalled it? He may have stalled that. He sits there a long time.
I think that was down in Copse too, which is the corner they are just approaching.
Roberto Moreno sees the leading group and he pulls aside.
There's Inoue stationary at the back and waving his arms, which I assume means he has stalled it. The crowd going wild. A great place to watch a racetrack here at Silverstone. You can get right down to the edge of the runoff area.
And Alesi just got the break because Michael Schumacher, Brundle. Martin Brundle is knee-deep in gravel. His day is over. This run in a Grand Prix car is now over because he must turn that car back to Suzuki for the upcoming races. And Martin Brundle, one of the crowd favorites here, obviously throws a thing away. He was in the gravel trap again yesterday, so this is not the first time.
So our second British driver now out of the race, and no doubt bitterly disappointed. Now that was not a look down the outside of Alesi. That is Schumacher's line across this wide racetrack. This is going to be interesting when the top 3 cars pit. Let's see if we can see what happened to Martin Brundle in the stadium section.
Right in front of everybody. You can't run and hide from this, but unfortunately that's where he got the trouble. It's designed to catch racing cars. And Alesi, we heard, was on his way to the pit lane. Yes, indeed. Peels off. Schumacher now has an opportunity, if he was faster, to have clear racetrack and make up some time on Damon Hill and hopefully make up time on Jean Alesi and maybe make the pass. Here's the pit stop.
16 men will spring into action.
The in-lap, the out-lap, and the time they're stationary is where Schumacher has an advantage over everybody else so far. 11.4 for David Coulthard. 10.7. Now see where the stopwatch stopped when they dropped the car. Actually, not when he accelerated away, so now we're going to have to watch Schumacher.
Broad new pits here in Silverstone, but there is still a speed limit in effect. Here comes Schumacher. Alesi manages, that's David Coulthard, I believe, is it not?
I believe it is David Coulthard. So in track position, if that is David Coulthard, he has made up some time on John Alesi.
It is Coulthard. Yes, indeed.
Now, Schumacher should be in the middle of this. After his pit stop, we'll see where it all shakes out, because this does change the face of these races very often.
Skies are clearing just that little bit. Sun threatening to break through. As I mentioned, we had raindrops earlier, and a part of the sky is obscured by dark clouds, so the eminently changeable British Midlands weather may have something to say about this race before we're through.
The brain thrust of the Williams team are in discussion on the pit wall as we speak about any strategy changes that they may employ now for Damon Hill, because it does change when you begin to dominate with speed, as Damon Hill is doing now. They can change from 3 stops to 2 stops by simply adding more fuel in that first stop, and Brundle's car still buried in the gravel trap.
As you look at Michael Schumacher, notice that last lap line on the bottom of your screen. Schumacher is now going faster than Hill. He does not have Alesi in front of him, and he is able to make time. These are critical laps before the first stop.
Both cars are on a light fuel load. Michael Schumacher will stay on this light fuel load for as long as possible because the car is at its very fastest.
There you see the order. Johnny Herbert up into the best position of his season thus far. Mika Hakkinen in 4th, Gerhard Berger 5th, Mark Blundell 6th, but they have pit stops ahead of them, as do the 1st and 2nd place cars of Hill and Schumacher. Alesi has stopped.
Johnny Herbert knows that Jos Verstappen is in the wings and trying to convince Flavio Briatore that he needs a second chance in this Benetton, and Johnny Herbert consequently is trying to make his Grand Prix career survive a bit longer. Is he in the pit lane? Not yet.
While all this is going on, further back, Massimiliano Papis, the Formula 3000 graduate driving for Jackie Oliver's footwork team, is up into 16th place.
And Johnny Herbert has been given the call to come in on the next lap as Gerhard Berger peels off down through the pit lane. There is a speed limit here again. 10.7 for Alesi. Let's watch Berger.
In the background, the Benetton team goes out in the lane. The Williams team is not in the pit lane, so we don't expect to stop just yet. Gerhard Berger paid a visit to his British fan club this weekend, and it is a big one. Not as fast as Alesi's stop by nearly 2 full seconds.
Hakkinen.
Oh, no.
The fastest man in the warm-up peels the Mercedes-Benz. They had a development Mercedes engine in this car for this race, and Mika Hakkinen, although he's still under his own power, a disaster again for McLaren.
And the tone creeping into Mika Hakkinen's pronouncements each day about the team's progress are beginning to get just that little bit sour, making you wonder whether Hakkinen is long for McLaren as they try to struggle back to respectability. Martin Brundle's car still stuck in the gravel.
Berger right after his pit stop.
I wonder if this has anything to do with his slow start, perhaps a problem with the clutch.
Leave the steering wheel there, Gerhard. That's the new rule. You can't take the steering wheel with you, certainly for next season.
Looking at the left front corner, kicking the tire, and it moved when he kicked it. Johnny Herbert in for Benetton. All this a dress rehearsal for the appearance by the world champion. 10 seconds. Quickest we've seen yet.
Brand new tires on that right front. See the sticker on both fronts. So Johnny Herbert in and out. Here's Alesi and here's David Coulthard. Maybe Johnny Herbert can hold these people off.
He's got that 40 just ahead of Alesi to provide some bulk.
Exceptional pit work again by Benetton. Johnny Herbert passes Jean Alesi and David Coulthard during his pit stop. What a tremendous move. And now Michael Schumacher, we can only presume, will also be ahead of Alesi and Coulthard if everything goes to Benetton's plan. Johnny Herbert can't believe it. He now sees Alesi and David Coulthard in his mirrors.
And he has a podium just over the horizon as race leader Damon Hill comes in. This is lap number 21.
11.4 for David Coulthard. He just ran the fastest lap of the race. Damon Hill did. Tires are on. Wait for the fueler. Oh, it looks good.
Little slow on the getaway, 11 seconds flat. We'll wait for a wide shot as he exits the pits. But he came in with such a lead that Damon Hill should be in great shape. Now he has to get back out and go as quick as possible to maintain that gap over Schumacher when he pits.
So Michael Schumacher has temporarily inherited the lead from Damon Hill. He has yet to make his pit stop. He looks in his mirror as he goes down the long hanger straight down to Stowe.
So Damon Hill pitted at the 1/3 mark in the race. That obviously means he is likely on a 2-stop strategy. We'll wait to see what Michael Schumacher does. Will he try to steal this race on a 1-stop strategy?
I'm sure some of you have noticed during these pit stops that whoever presses these stopwatches, it's a bit inconsistent, because if you replay your VCR, I am sure that when I saw a Lacey come in or one of the Ferraris, I saw the stopwatch start before he actually stopped. So these are, I would say, only reasonably accurate pit stop times.
You don't want them timing your soft-boiled egg in the morning, that's for sure.
3 minutes after the water boils.
Now, will Schumacher stop this time around? Or is he trying to gun that car on a 1-stop strategy that will not allow Damon Hill to come back around? If he goes to 30 laps, you can count on it.
Oh, that would be a bitter, bitter blow for Damon Hill and Williams if Benetton and Michael Schumacher pull it over them again with pit stop strategies. Damon Hill is clearly the fastest car on the racetrack, so he better get the bit between his teeth here and begin to presume that Schumacher might make it a 1-stop strategy and begin to chase him down.
Michael Schumacher with 9.7 seconds in hand over Damon Hill. Johnny Herbert now 34 seconds behind. But remember, Schumacher has not pitted.
In the traffic jam. That's one of the minorities just ahead of Michael Schumacher. That was Max Papis in the Arrows car that just got lapped. Papis, his Grand Prix debut, having tested for Lotus last year, now managed, in fact, by Peter Collins, the former team manager at Lotus.
Alesi and Coulthard running 5th and 6th. We'll take this opportunity for a timeout and return for more live coverage of the British Grand Prix. We have a Pacific in the drink. Schumacher, who is in the lead and who did not pit. Eric, I think it's almost a foregone conclusion that he is going to make 1 stop in his bid to win this race.
24 laps gone. Damon Hill now 7.6. So Damon Hill, even though he's on full tank, still has the measure of Michael Schumacher. He is still running 0.3 of a second quicker. But if he has to make an extra pit stop, that is an awful lot of time to make up. Meanwhile, his teammate David Coulthard has a great scrap here with Jean Alesi. 7.6 seconds Schumacher to Damon Hill, 1st and 2nd.
There you see how the gap is coming down. Excuse me, how the gap is going up. The number in parentheses was the last lap gap. Schumacher has now opened it up, perhaps due to traffic or something. There you see the present gap. Schumacher back to Hill, 8.6 seconds. As you watch David Coulthard, a lot of black clouds on the horizon now. Rain would certainly add an interesting element to this race.
Now look what happened. Damon Hill. The gap is now 9.3 seconds. So suddenly in the last 2 laps, Damon Hill has either got caught in traffic or slowed down dramatically because Michael Schumacher pulled 2 seconds in the last 2 laps.
The Benetton team took great pains to announce this weekend that, contrary to recent newspaper reports in Britain, they are not talking to Damon Hill. As we've discussed before, Michael Schumacher wants more than $1 million per race next year. You see the gap has somewhat stabilized, although Hill continues to slip just that little bit. Benetton says they do not want to pay more than $20 million for Michael Schumacher's services next year. They say they are not talking to Damon Hill, but Damon Hill, for his part, says he is talking to all the top teams about next year, including Ferrari.
How valuable is a racing driver of Michael Schumacher's stature? Well, remember when J.J. Leto filled in for Michael when he was banned for those 2 races? The team looked like a shambles. Michael Schumacher comes back and instantly puts them back on top again. So, is 20 million cheap? I don't know. How valuable is a Grand Prix win? Some update notes on Berger's Ferrari. Yes, the left front wheel was loose. He didn't believe he could drive it round to the pit lane, so he was forced to stop. And you saw him out examining the wheel himself. Mika Häkkinen broke the gearbox in the McLaren.
Incidentally, the McLaren team has acquired more technical expertise. American designer and engineer Steve Nichols is back with the McLaren team, where he once designed their most successful car, the MP4, back in 1988, that won 15 of the 16 Grands Prix in the hands of Alain Prost and the late Ayrton Senna. First place for Michael Schumacher. He will have a pit stop coming up near halfway. We'll take a break now and return for that. The gap is now 10 seconds. This is what he wants. Open a lead over Hill before he stops. Stay with us. Schumacher continues to open a slight lead over Damon Hill in preparation for his mid-race pit stop. Sunday Night Baseball coming up here on ESPN. The Texas Rangers will visit the Boston Red Sox. The Ranger Killer Z, Juan Gonzalez, and Ivan Rodriguez will do battle with the power Boston offense, still suffering from the lack of Mo Vaughn. We don't know yet if he will play tonight, but Tim Naring and the rest of the boys will be on hand. Baseball live at 7:56 Eastern Time here on ESPN tonight. Jean Alesi with David Coulthard, the young Scot in the Williams-Renault, right there as he has been since they pitted. Alesi runs 4th, Coulthard 5th in this British Grand Prix. But the big question is up front. Michael Schumacher leads the race and has not yet pitted. He is obviously on a one-stop strategy. His arch-rival Damon Hill on 2. There is young Jules Bouillon, who needs a lift in the seat to be able to see over the steering wheel. Test driver for Williams, racing driver for the Sauber Ford team.
Sits in the car like Arturo Merzario used. You could barely see the top of his helmet when you had the straight-on looks on Jules Bouillon. Looks a bit like that. Still not as fast as Frentzen in that car. Here is Heinz-Harald Frentzen running in 6th place after the pit stop as we get a quick peek at a full field summary.
A lot of attrition in the last 10 to 15 laps. Mika Häkkinen is out. Mark Blundell continues around in the McLaren.
I said Frentzen running 6th after the pit stops. Of course, he has yet to make his first pit stop, so he may be on the same strategy as Michael Schumacher. Maybe a one-stop race, 28 laps, almost 29 laps completed already, which means Schumacher only has to go one more, and he's just about halfway. Williams better put their thinking caps on.
Through Copse, past the pit out. Now this is the Beckett section we were talking about. Getting gradually tighter as the cars rocket left, right. Big correction right there for Coulthard. You better get it right, otherwise you can mess up your whole lap.
It's common knowledge that Frank Williams had a meeting with Ford at Montreal to discuss, I presume, engine development in the future of Formula One. And it is believed that Frank again is courting Honda for a possible tie-up. It's unusual that Frank and Patrick make such bold statements that we have heard this week, particularly about having to share engines with other teams. One of the things that, oh, look at this. Papi sends his Grand Prix debut buried in the gravel trap. That's what it's designed for, to bury the car in the gravel trap and not let it go any further.
That's a shame. He had not pitted, but he was up to 11th place. Young Papis, 25 years of age. There you see Heinz-Harald Frentzen has made his pit stop. Those behind him have not. One-stop strategies appear to be pretty popular today at Silverstone.
So Benetton are ready for Michael Schumacher. He's just about halfway. Damon Hill will go back in the lead, and we presume, well, we know Damon will have to make one more pit stop. So right now, the upper hand lays with Schumacher. Papis, in fairness to him, somehow that left rear wheel has broken. The outside rim of the wheel is broken. I'm not sure he knows that. Fights for control. Oh, look at this here. So obviously, he made contact with something to help break that left rear wheel first and then damage that left front suspension. So Jackie Oliver's new signing, he was a test driver first for this team as Schumacher peels off. So Papis puts the arrows in the gravel trap and Schumacher puts the Benetton in the pit lane. Watch the stopwatch.
Ooh, locking up the right front all the way in. Team goes to work. Getting enough fuel to go the rest of the way.
10.1 is the fastest so far.
Damon Hill rockets past the pits into the lead. What do you do if you're Hill? Try to run away from him or stop now?
See what happened here, 13.4. It took that long to put enough fuel into this car to finish the race without another pit stop. Damon Hill will now have gone into the lead because that was too long to be stopped for Damon Hill not to take the lead. But the race starts from now.
Damon Hill back into the lead. You ride with him. More dark clouds on the horizon. This one is far from over. Back live at the British Grand Prix. We'll take another look at that pit stop comparison. During the first stops, obviously a long one for Michael Schumacher on a one-stop strategy, adding the extra fuel. Damon Hill, who was leading the race when he made the first of his two planned stops. And obviously it seems that Michael Schumacher is in control once again.
Or is he? Because remember, they're both on full tanks now, so we're going to watch the World Graphics because they will give us regular updates on the speed of both of these cars on the racetrack at the moment. Damon Hill, I think, needs 22 to 25 seconds of a cushion if he is to make another pit stop and still keep the lead over Michael Schumacher. We'll see it in a minute, but Damon Hill just set the fastest lap of the race again. So he still seems to have the speed. He has one more stop. What was that mechanical noise we heard there? There was
sound, wasn't it?
Something very unusual as we boosted the audio on David Coulthard's car. Was it something mechanical braking or rubbing the ground? There it is again. The fastest lap of the race so far, Damon Hill. He's on full tanks, as is Michael Schumacher. He has to run, though. He has to get away further from Michael Schumacher. 21.3. It needs to be bigger than that if he's to make a stop. Oh, the race is now underway, boys.
And that race extends to the boys in the pits, who are no doubt being told by engineer Dave Brown and Frank Williams and Patrick Head, Damon is doing his job. He's getting us the time we need, we think. But when he comes in, we're going to have to get him in and out faster than we ever have before.
John Alesi continues to trail the two Benetton cars. Johnny Herbert still having one of his best runs on a one-stop strategy, as is his team leader. The Ferrari screams through. The V12 will be no more when this V10 comes online. Can you imagine? A totally new design concept from Ferrari. So remember, the cradle I mentioned earlier means that the monocoque will essentially be extended back to the gearbox when you will literally just drop the engine in like a cassette. The engine at the moment is bolted to the back of the monocoque, so the tug, engine and gearbox is one long stressed unit. Not next year if John Barnard's plans go according to plan.
You see that Renault signage in the background. For the first time ever, the Williams team is running Formula One cars and British Touring cars this weekend. There'll be a big round of the British Touring Car Championship following this race today at Silverstone, and Williams has entries in both events.
Other American interest here this weekend is in Formula 3 because Zach Brown and Brian Cunningham represent America. Brian in the Valvoline car finished 15th, and I believe Zach Brown didn't have a very good day. He was 21st.
Trans Am star Tommy Kendall is in the pits this weekend. looking at the Formula One cars and wishing no doubt, but when you're about 6 feet 4 or 5 inches tall like Tommy is, Formula One is not an option. But British touring cars probably look like a lot of fun to Tom.
And Phil Hill is at Silverstone this weekend. Of course, Phil Hill, the first American world driving champion in Formula One in those great days of the past in that shark-nosed Ferrari. Look how low the center belly of David Coulthard's Williams is to the ground, virtually running on the ground. Damon Hill, not David Coulthard. Half a second a lap faster. Damon Hill has the measure of Michael Schumacher, but he's not far enough up the road yet to make that a comfortable pit stop.
Back to Michael Schumacher, who has slower traffic in front of him now. And that is what Damon Hill wants. He needs Schumacher to be delayed on the racetrack. Well, so much for that. We'll take a quick timeout, keep the stopwatch on our first and second place drivers as the battle intensifies for victory in the British Grand Prix. In London town, but it's an overcast day at the Silverstone racetrack, about a 2-hour drive northwest of London. Damon Hill leads Michael Schumacher, and look at the gap. It's up to 25 seconds as Damon Hill keeps pounding on the fastest lap in this race. He qualified at 128.124, and he's getting within a second of that in race trim.
Now he just about has enough to make that second pit stop. From here on in, everything he can produce until that pit stop is a comfort zone. His last pit board said in 4 more laps. Roberto Moreno moves aside, lets him through. So Damon Hill will do 3.5 more laps because he's almost finished this one. Then he will pit. Then we'll see where Schumacher is.
If everything goes well, he will come out just about the time Michael Schumacher comes rocketing by the pit out, and then the race will well and truly begin. 4 British drivers run in the top 6. Hill is first, then the German Michael Schumacher, then Brit Johnny Herbert, then Jean Alesi from France, then Brits David Coulthard and Mark Blundell. Rubens Barrichello runs 7th, followed by Olivier Panis in 8th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen 9th, Mika Salo 10th.
Now, is David Coulthard a Brit? Well, yeah, I think he is.
He is British. He is not English. He is a Scot.
And I wonder, is Georgie watching this at home? Because this may help produce baby number 3 if Damon Hill continues to perform like he is. They're ready and waiting in case he has to make an earlier stop. Damon Hill, under pressure, is not prone to making mistakes under pressure, which is one of the things Patrick Head and Frank Williams likes. One of the things they don't like is sharing this engine with Benetton. Patrick also made a statement earlier that one of the things that really cheesed him off was the hydraulic pump that in fact they developed for this Renault V10, developed the hard way through learning what the engine needed. He considered it as Williams property, and in fact Renault simply gave it to Benetton.
25 seconds even. Is that enough? We think so. I'm sure Damon doesn't.
I think it's enough, but the comfort zone would make it better. He's running faster than Schumacher because he's on a lighter fuel load. There it is there. 2 more laps to go. The Williams pit board tells him. They're also in radio contact. He'll come out with about less than half a tank of fuel. And there's nothing Michael Schumacher likes more than a straight fight. Here's Beckett's. We may be in for a barnstormer when this second pit stop comes for Damon Hill. He needs to get all the cars out of his way. Move the Minardi aside. Let the leaders through here. I will guarantee you the public address system in Silverstone is absolutely jumping off the wall at the moment. Alesi brings the Ferrari in for pit stop number 2. His last stop was 10.7. It was a good one.
Working lap number 40. Tires are finished. Lots of fuel.
Not bad, 11.1. David Coulthard now has to make his second one. Johnny Herbert stays clear of Alesi and Coulthard because he's on that one-stop strategy just like his team leader. Here's the man, though. Every single eye around the world on global television is on Adrian Newey with the headset. Looks on, and the arrow says Damon Hill come in. But the in-lap is so vital. He cannot slow down. He's got to make up time on the light fuel load on the in-lap. He's got to get down the pit lane exactly on the speed limit and then back on the racetrack. He's got to get up to speed as soon as possible.
The track looks so quick, so smooth. A couple of years ago, Derek and I took part in a bicycle race on this Silverstone circuit, the entire 3.142 miles of the International Grand Prix circuit. And I can tell you, it is very bumpy, and it is a long way around.
I was about to say Damon Hill will get held up. Johnny Herbert peels off. Now, why is he in?
He did pit a good bit earlier than his team leader, unless he needs special attention to something.
So Johnny Herbert is now back in a fight with David Coulthard on Jean Alesi.
Alesi pitted from 4th and now runs 5th. Probably back up to 4th with this stop by Johnny Herbert, who pits from 3rd spot.
Here's David Coulthard down that front straight.
And here is Damon Hill. We expect him in this time around. We'll see if the traffic held him up too much. Ooh, a lot of water on that camera lens, too. Very narrow pit lane and very twisting.
11.4 was his first pit stop.
Here we go.
Good so far. Where's Schumacher? Schumacher is through Abbey. He's coming up through Bridge. He's in through the infield.
Not as quick as it could have been. The tires went on in less than 4 seconds. Here comes Schumacher.
Here he is.
Your screen.
He's going to take the lead. Michael Schumacher has just about squeezed past Damon Hill, but the fight is now on because Damon Hill may have enough speed to catch him.
He looked a little slow to me coming off the pit lane. He had to be mindful of the pit speed limit, which I'm sure his team reminded him of.
So 25 seconds wasn't quite enough to keep that lead. Lost it by about 2 seconds, and now the chase is really on with 20 laps to go.
Now Schumacher will have the lighter car, but the older tires.
There it is, missed it by 2.3.
Make a note of that. You need 27 seconds if you're going to make an 11-second pit stop. Schumacher lights up the tires. He is trying hard.
Oh, this is a straight fight. The British Grand Prix, where everybody here is going to cheer on Damon Hill, and sometimes that emotion does make you go faster. Look at Schumacher, lights up the left front here, smokes those front tires, trying to fend off Damon Hill.
Ah, shades of British Grand Prix of old.
We mentioned earlier Damon Hill is good under pressure. If there's any criticism of Michael Schumacher, is that he buckles under pressure. We have seen him off the road many times, and Damon Hill is closer now. Over the curves, 0.2 of a second, just in that half a lap. Oh, it's down to 1.5. Oh, Georgie, hang on to that baby.
This weekend, Frank Williams and his team gave Alain Prost, the 4-time world champion, the FW15 he drove 2 years ago in finishing second to the late Ayrton Senna at the final race of Prost Championship season in Australia. Prost has a 4-victory record in this race in 4 different cars: the McLaren Tag Porsche Turbo, the McLaren Honda, the Ferrari, and the Williams Renault.
Damon Hill closes down. He will be the hero of everybody once again. Living in Dublin, Ireland, Everybody in Ireland will cheer for Damon Hill, and this battle gets closer. He is getting ever closer to Michael Schumacher.
Now let's recall Adelaide, Australia last year when Damon Hill tried to overtake Michael Schumacher with a 1-point difference in the World Championship at stake. Did Schumacher deliberately run into Hill and take him off the racetrack? We will never know. Raindrops are now a factor on the camera lens.
Fresh tires on Damon Hill's car. He is all over Michael Schumacher down through the stadium section at Luffield. Traffic is ahead. Panis in the Ligier moves aside.
And the crowd going mad as Schumacher uses all of the road and then some up on the curb. Panis heads for the pits, and his second pit stop. That leaves open racetrack for the two combatants.
Good stuff here. Damon Hill closes in. The shivers go down his back. He knows he has the speed.
I'll put you in the cockpit, Derek. Where are you going to try and set him up?
Here's the problem here, Bob. The rain is beginning to fall. The Williams was a disaster in the rain every race this year. Funny enough, yesterday during wet qualifying, David Coulthard was the fastest man in the rain as he peels off for pit stop number 2.
Team going to work, trying to keep their minds on what they're doing, but you couldn't blame them if they were thinking about what's going on out on the racetrack. As team leaders, Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher go at it. There's Johnny Herbert coming around. Will he take? Yes, he does. Herbert will take third place back from David Coulthard. Herbert could have a podium in his future, and that would bring smiles up and down the pit lane. There is Jean Alesi, presently in 5th spot.
And David Coulthard did manage to finally get by Jean Alesi using those pit stops. So as the raindrops begin to fall, the chase continues with Damon Hill chasing down Michael Schumacher. Here it is.
They are that far apart. We'll be right back. Back live at the British Grand Prix. Here's a look at our Haviland race recap. Michael Schumacher leads, but by a tiny fraction of a second. He has led since lap 42 when he took the lead from Damon Hill on pit stops. We've had 3 lead changes among 2 drivers, but they haven't happened on the racetrack. We may have one in our future as Schumacher and Damon Hill run virtually nose to tail. 15 cars of the original 24 starters are still in the running. 6 cars, the 6-point scorers, are on the lead lap. Schumacher, Hill, Herbert, Coulthard, Alesi, and Blundell. There you see the red and white McLaren of Blundell just ahead of this battle for the victory.
So difficult to pass here, although it's a reasonably open racetrack. The opportunity to slide down the inside is so few and far between here. Traffic may play a role in this race.
Both drivers using the Renault V10 engine, identical engines in both cars. Spectacular examples of Formula One technology as the moisture continues to build on the onboard camera of Damon Hill.
You can see the gray cloud. It's only on half of the... Oh, he gets it sideways. He's off.
He's off the track as the steering wheel, and so is Schumacher. Was there contact?
Johnny Herbert may win the British Grand Prix.
Now off comes the steering wheel, no question about it. Damon Hill's race is run. Now I'm assuming, yes, it's Schumacher. I don't believe it.
We were on board as Damon Hill made contact with Michael Schumacher, and he says, good night. They come through bridge, heavy braking for Luffield, virtually impossible to pass here, and Damon Hill makes a kamikaze move, had no hope of ever pulling that off. A huge mistake by Damon Hill. He takes first and second out, and Johnny Herbert will be in tears at the moment at the thought that he has the car and the speed to win the British Grand Prix. A terrible mistake by Damon Hill. Here it is again from overhead. He makes a huge lunge forward at Michael Schumacher, makes a terrible mistake, and plows into the side of Schumacher. Not a hope of ever making that pass happen. Damon Hill makes one of the biggest mistakes of his Grand Prix career and opens the door for another Brit.
There's pictures coming to us from our host broadcaster at BBC. There you see Damon Hill walking in. Desperate men do desperate things. There is Michael Schumacher. Johnny Herbert with nearly a second and a half in hand now over this man's teammate, David Coulthard. Here it is from the onboard camera, looking forward this time. Looks nice and clear there, but over comes Michael Schumacher, and the wheel is simply ripped out of Damon Hill's hands.
I can't remember when two front-running cars racing together have ever managed to squeeze past one another at that particular position. And Frank's expression says it all. My driver made a mistake. We now hope that David Coulthard can win this race for us. That's what we came here for.
So British drivers now run first and second. There is Johnny Herbert. Ooh, thank you. As Roberto Moreno or Pedro Diniz slide on over. Now that is David Coulthard right behind him. This now becomes the battle for the race lead. Once again between a Benetton leading a Williams.
Whoa, this is another barnstorm of a race. A Benetton leading a Williams. You simply go back to your number 2 drivers and you have exactly the same situation. Both drivers have made mistakes at critical times this year. Both drivers have been off the road. They have never, ever been under so much pressure as they are today, as Damon Hill waves to his many, many fans here, but all eyes are focused on this battle here. The Brits are in control, but they are under pressure.
Well, perhaps his frustration today will pale in significance for Damon Hill, provided a healthy baby is born to he and wife Georgie, but it's going to be a while. The disappointment will be bitter. We'll be right back. Live at the British Grand Prix, right in the middle of a scrap for victory, David Coulthard of Scotland is now in the lead over Johnny Herbert.
And he is all over the racetrack. Under brakes, he locks them up. He gets it sideways. This was a huge scrap for the lead. David Coulthard now leads the British Grand Prix.
Coulthard is out front, but that's not the end of the story with 12 laps remaining. We'll give you another look at the pass.
And it was a wild moment for David Coulthard fighting with Johnny Herbert. Here it is here. No, in fact, that's our world feed still showing David Coulthard ahead of Johnny Herbert.
That's a replay of that wild, wide line taken by David Coulthard. Is it moisture on the racetrack? Or just the young Scot in the lead looking for his biggest race victory of all? Coulthard, Herbert, Alesi, Blundell, Barrichello, and Panisse as we go back to live action. Heinz-Harald Frentzen just outside the top 6 point-scoring positions. But while we re-rack our videotape, Damon Hill is in the Williams pits, having taken himself and Michael Schumacher out of this race in his attempt to take the lead. David Coulthard is on the racetrack. Let's take another look now, if we can, at the pass on Johnny Herbert from on board with slower traffic ahead.
This was great stuff. David Coulthard down the right, down the left, slides down the inside and forces the issue on Johnny Herbert. It was hardly over there, though, because Johnny Herbert down the run to Vale came straight back, tried to take it from David Coulthard and wasn't able to do it. Coulthard forced him down the outside. What a great battle. Then they went up under the bridge and down to Luffield, and that's what you saw earlier on when Coulthard got sideways.
Now, that is not the end of the story. Moments ago, David Coulthard was called in by the officials for excessive speed in the pit lane during his pit stop. It will be a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, and it will put Johnny Herbert back in the lead, probably for good.
How to destroy the best Grand Prix race of the year. Give David Coulthard, the leader, a 10-second penalty. And all the work of the Williams team suddenly goes out the window. They have won 6 times here, or 50% of the last 12 races here, 6 times. And they have the speed in the cars today. Damon Hill throws it away. David Coulthard captures it, picks up the ball and runs with it. And a stupid 10-second penalty will destroy the race.
Ironically, the pit lane here at Silverstone is one of the widest and therefore the safest in all of Formula One. At the moment, Coulthard drives away from Johnny Herbert. That may be because Herbert knows Coulthard has that penalty in his future. Jean Alesi is third. If he can hold on, it would be the 35th podium in the British Grand Prix for the Ferrari brand. Mark Blundell runs in fourth spot. Rubens Barrichello fifth. Here comes Coulthard in for his stop. Olivier Panis of France in sixth. Heinz-Harald Frentzen seventh, followed by Pierluigi Martini, Mika Salo, Luca Badua rounding out your top 10. And this pit entry and exit will be heavily scrutinized by the radar guns.
What a shame to destroy the British Grand Prix, and Johnny Herbert sails into the lead, but Jean Alesi is not far behind, and Mark Blundell is about to possibly get a podium finish. You can see his eyes, and now the car catches fire.
Saw the mechanic with the jack swatting at it with his hand, then he thought better of it. Excess fuel in the exhaust, no doubt. Back onto the racetrack comes David Coulthard. Team owner Frank Williams looks on, wondering now whether his man has the time and the speed to reel in Johnny Herbert. We'll take a timeout. You don't want to miss the end of this one. More live coverage of the British Grand Prix coming up. Welcome back to the most dramatic Formula One Grand Prix of the year, the British Grand Prix. Johnny Herbert, without a victory on his resume, leads this race after his teammate was taken out by Damon Hill. Now there you see Mark Blundell, who presently runs in fourth spot, chasing David Coulthard. Now you ride just above the helmet of Rubens Barrichello, holding down fifth. Olivier Panis is sixth. Barrichello will be looking to inject some life into the Team Jordan Peugeot party that will begin as soon as this race is over.
53 laps now completed. 8 laps to go for Johnny Herbert. The emotion that this man will feel inside this cockpit, inside this helmet, will be enormous. Chills up and down his spine because he is within sight of his first ever victory as long as this car stays reliable and he stays mistake-free. 71 Grand Prix races under his belt. It started with Benetton when he finished fourth in Brazil, just back from those terrible foot injuries which he still suffers from today. Has a pronounced limp, but Johnny Herbert needs to control all his emotions and he may win this race, but Jean Alesi is underway. The chase is on. 6.5. Herbert just keeping that stable. 6.4 was the gap the last lap, so Herbert has the measure of Jean Alesi. He just needs to settle down and be consistent. What a day for everybody in England if Johnny Herbert, such a crowd favorite here, has a huge fan club run by his mother and his father here at the back of the grandstands, and they are in tears as we speak.
He has endured so much. Began his Formula One career with this Benetton team on a sweltering day in Rio de Janeiro, where he finished a remarkable fourth despite the injuries Derek spoke about. But later on, the team decided that his feet weren't up to the heavy braking stresses required of the tighter circuits, and so they dropped him. He languished with the Lotus team for some time, fought his way back, was brought into Benetton to partner Michael Schumacher, and if he can win, he will be every bit as emotional as that man in the background in the number 27 Ferrari was when he scored his first victory a couple of races ago in Montreal.
So Alesi needs to squeeze a bit more. He brought it down 2 or 3 tenths. The Jordan of Rubens Barrichello is now up in the points, despite that 10-second penalty earlier. And he's driving past his workshop. The race shop is over to his left-hand side along that front straight, waving the Irish flag. Discover Ireland is carried on this car. And that is Mark Blundell right in front of Rubens Barrichello. And this is a fight for position as Michael Schumacher is besieged by everybody who wants to know. Imagine what the war of words will be now. What will Michael Schumacher now say about his sometime friend and cohort? Oh, look at the battle here. Blundell holding off Barrichello.
I know what Michael Schumacher won't say. He won't say, I remember one time I was driving on the streets of Adelaide, Australia.
6 laps to go. Great fight here. Eddie Jordan holds his breath. Huge party planned for this evening. They bring in a big flatbed truck. Put up some instruments. You don't have to be a musician. They just give you instruments. You can do whatever you like with it. And they have a rock and roll session that goes into the night.
A key member of that band is Damon Hill, who is an accomplished guitarist. I wonder if he'll be sitting in this afternoon.
And Eddie Jordan, who is an accomplished drummer. So Mark Blundell, who was told 2 races ago that you have 2 more races and we will evaluate your position, is struggling to stay with the McLaren team. He needs a good performance to stay with this McLaren team. September 16th will be a big day for Mark Blundell because he will finally marry his lovely girlfriend, Debbie.
Barrichello closing in, ever closer. Rumor has it that American Steve Nichols will be given total control of the design team at McLaren, replacing Neil Oatley, or at least supervising Neil Oatley, who designed the car you see just up the road there. It has been a bitter disappointment. Several of the recent McLaren chassis have been disappointing, favored only by very powerful engines.
Oh, Mark is beginning to block. Defensive. Oh, he nearly hits him. Oh, you saw Barrichello. You heard the brake squeal. You saw that right front lock up for a minute. But Mark Blundell is entitled to use whatever racetrack he needs. It's Barrichello's job to get by. You mentioned the car earlier that Steve Nichols designed, one of the most successful of all, the MP44. In fact, that was the Honda-powered car that was used so successfully by McLaren.
5 laps remain for race leader Johnny Herbert, whose wife Becky and 2 young daughters are no doubt watching and are perhaps as misty as he's going to be. Grand Prix with the BBC trying to find focus on their cameras. This is Johnny Herbert, the man totally in control of the British Grand Prix, seeking his first ever victory. I mentioned that he was dropped by the Benetton team over concerns about his fitness. After those injuries, the race he was dropped at was this one, the British Grand Prix. What irony if he can come through today to win the biggest race in a British driver's life for that Benetton team.
And you can see by our world feed graphics here that Johnny Herbert does have the speed to maintain this pace ahead of Jean Alesi. And the Constructors' Championship still stays alive and healthy and kicking because Johnny Herbert, one of his main jobs that Benetton wanted him to accomplish was take points away from Damon Hill for the Constructors' title. So with Schumacher out, the Constructors' title still looks as if it could head to Benetton's way, and Jean Alesi in vain chase of the Renault V10. What a day for Johnny Herbert. Benetton have never won the British Grand Prix. They could be 5.5 laps from their biggest day ever. Their workshop is about 15 miles from here down in Whitney, run by Tom Walkinshaw. Well, he's the engineering director still. Director of technical development, is that what you call him? Basically, he is the boss that has created Benetton's success, even though Flavio Briatore likes to tell everybody that he's responsible for it.
In fact, Tom Walkinshaw is searching for a base here in England for his newest responsibility, the Ligier team, which it is said he will take over 80% ownership of very shortly. One site he might consider is that of the former Simtech team. The Simtech team has gone bankrupt and their facilities will go under the auctioneer's hammer next Thursday. We have 2 more cars out of the race, Andrea Monterbini and Roberto Moreno. That leaves 12 cars of the 24 original starters still in the running.
And as is fitting for Silverstone, we have seen a classic event. And will we see another first-time winner? This is an unusual season for Formula One, having had a first-time winner already with Jean Alesi, who openly said, the biggest problem I had when I took the lead from Michael Schumacher was I began to cry so hard I couldn't see the hairpin. I had to take a deep breath and tell myself, concentrate or you'll throw this thing away. And Johnny Herbert is in the same position now. Control the emotions. His whole life, everything he has lived for day in, day out, now rides in the cockpit of this Benetton.
It would be interesting to eavesdrop on the communications from the pits, how they're talking their man through this race. If in fact they are. Johnny Herbert certainly needs no help from outsiders, but it would be interesting to hear if they're having to calm him down or if they're saying anything at all about the fact that he is so close to that elusive victory and that he could take it in the biggest race of any British racing driver's life.
What a comfort level it is for a driver to know that after a 5 or 6 lap chase since you took the lead, you still see P1 and you still see the gap the same to the car behind. He is on his final lap. Look at the Brits go absolutely berserk with the Union Jacks. Johnny Herbert will remember this for the rest of his life as being the biggest thing that ever happened to him or his family or every family member who will ring him up and say he's a family member, no matter how far back they go. Barrichello's crash. Barrichello's lunges over of Blundell.
Oh, and he's lost the left front. Blundell soldiers on as though nothing had happened. I wonder if there was contact or if Barrichello simply went off the racetrack. Getting back to Johnny Herbert, still on that last lap. He is the most British of the British racing drivers. Raised in Essex, and he has the accent to prove it. Britain, of course, is a Commonwealth, so Northern Irishmen, Scotsmen, Welshmen, and so forth are considered British drivers. But Johnny is as English can be.
Learned his trade in go-karts. 12 seconds he now enjoys over John O'Lacey. He is home and dry. Go-karts to Formula Ford. He won the Formula Ford Festival, and he sailed high from there fast in everything he got into. This is his biggest day.
11 cars left in the race, but 10 of them don't really count to this crowd. This one does. Johnny Herbert, with that long-sought first victory, fist in the air, and rightly so. The checkered flags will welcome him home. And this crowd will go mad along with the Benetton team. Michael Schumacher may be the world champ, but he is from the continent after all. This team is British, and their man, their British driver, has won. Jean O'Lacey with Ferrari's 35th podium performance in the British Grand Prix. And finishing it all off, David Coulthard from Scotland, and the Williams-Renault team will make it 2 British drivers on the podium.
I doubt if Johnny Herbert can talk on the radio now. I doubt if there are many people close to Johnny who are not in tears when they see this graphic. Winner, Johnny Herbert, winner of the British Grand Prix.
31 years of age, just turned so last month. First victory for Benetton. And that is one stat that he can go back and toss on the garage floor in front of the entire assembled team and say, number 2 is number 1 today, boys.
And the fan club just doubled its membership because there's nothing like success to fuel people's interest. And Johnny Herbert, oh, he's out of the car. He takes the seatbelt off to wave to the fans.
We will welcome him home ourselves when we return live to the British Grand Prix. Stay with us. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, glad to be here to document the first Grand Prix victory for 31-year-old Johnny Herbert, who stepped out of the car and was welcomed home by Michael Schumacher and team director Flavio Briatore. But there was action in the closing laps of this race. Watch this battle between Blundell and Barrichello as it all goes wrong.
So Blundell obviously moves across and Barrichello to block him. The move might have been made a little bit too late, catches Barrichello out. But there was also, here it is here. Barrichello goes down the inside. Watch McLaren's move. There's the move. It's hard to see it from the in-car, but Blundell twitches down to the inside. I think he made the move a little bit late, caught out Barrichello, destroys the Jordan, and actually Mark Blundell did get a puncture, and he limped across the line with a shredded left rear wheel. However, he did get across in what we think to be 5th place.
Yes, unofficially 5th place for Mark Blundell as he crossed the finish line. And upstairs, the podium finishers prepare to go out and meet their public. David Coulthard, 3rd place, and Johnny in 1st. Bob Constanduros, the public address announcer in the pink shirt, gets a quick comment. But the rules state that the drivers can talk to no one before they perform this ceremony. Prince Michael of Kent, the bearded gentleman, patron of the Royal Automobile Club, on hand to present the trophies.
Johnny Herbert, enjoy every single second. Put your arms in the air, get the photographs that will be the focal point of the rest of your life, because you deserve it today to take the opportunity when it's presented.
A special message to a young man out there, the son of International Hot Rod Association top fuel champion Doug Herbert. His young son is named Johnny Herbert, and you're looking at his favorite driver.
A very special moment for a driver who has paid his dues in racing. Terrible foot injuries chasing his dream in a Formula 3000 accident at Brands Hatch. A lot of people thought his career was over, and he has never stood taller than he does today. Soak up every second of it, Johnny.
The rain beginning to fall harder at Silverstone, but you can bet this crowd is not leaving. As the presentations go to two British drivers on the podium, flanking Jean Alesi. Congratulations.
And what must David Coulthard think? He had the speed to beat Johnny Herbert, and he was called in for that controversial 10-second penalty. He will have to force the smile, but David Coulthard, 23 years of age, came oh so close to having a small piece of history himself. And look at the rain that comes down.
The generations pass quickly in Grand Prix racing. You might say David Coulthard is the younger generation, Alesi and Herbert the elder. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back from high above Silverstone. You can see that the weather is closing in, but the race is now complete, and victory has gone to a first-time winner, Johnny Herbert. As you see the world feed displaying the graphics in the Drivers' Championship, there has been some shuffling. Jean Alesi third, Johnny Herbert moves up into fourth, David Coulthard to fifth, and Gerhard Berger dropping to sixth. One of the busiest airfields in Britain today, with helicopter traffic in and out from morning until dark, ferrying the 90,000 spectators for today's running of the British Grand Prix.
Constructors' Championship, you can see that Benetton still enjoys that lead over Ferrari. Williams dropped back to third place. Jordan, who had another handful of points taken away by Barrichello's incident. And Sauber and Footwork bring up the rear.
Checkered flag coverage of this British Grand Prix will be coming your way August 6th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Our next stop will be at the end of July at the Grand Prix of Germany at the ultra-fast Hockenheim circuit, live at 7:50 a.m. Eastern, 4:50 a.m. Pacific Time. Soon it will be time to head for the Max and the umbrellas. As you can see, the track very wet. Congratulations to Johnny Herbert. I'm Bob Barsha for Derek Daly. Thanks for being with us. So long, everyone. We'll see you next from Hockenheimring in Germany.